2, 1.
First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, I appreciate you joining us here. We are streaming live from our newsroom, from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and we appreciate everybody who's able to join us for these segments, however it is that you find them. Thanks for being here. And we cover a lot of different topics on this show, but right now we're talking about something pretty amazing, and it has to do with a study from OHSU that has been published in the New England Journal of Medicine, talking about some gene editing studies that they actually started back in 2020 using CRISPR technology. There's a lot of tech here that I'm discussing, but we're going to be getting to the bottom line here is that during this study, they were able to at least partially restore eyesight in 11 of the 14 participants in this study. So this is pretty amazing. This is using different kinds of gene editing studies on an actual person in order to help improve that eyesight. And we have one of those participants joining us right now, and I'm really excited to have her on here. We have Donna Gooden, who is joining us. Donna, thank you very much for being here and joining us here to talk about this really amazing revelation that OHSU has published and that obviously you've been a part of here for a while, but now the world is finding out about it. And
thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, to start, Donna, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your history and your eyesight, just to give everybody a general understanding of what you were going through before you met OHSU for the study?
So I was born visually impaired. It's always hard to describe this to other people because it's hard to put it in words that make sense to everybody, I guess. For me, it was normal. When I was a kid, I was fine. I can see a little bit. I could look around and see steps and doors and stuff like that. And I was happy. My parents, however, were not. And so they drugged me to a million different eye doctors, much to my dismay. I hated it. And so when I got older, I just thought, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done with doctors, because in those days, nobody even knew what Leber's was. So we kept going to eye doctors. They kept saying, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this. And it never was. I was finally 13 when I was diagnosed. So as I got older, I just wanted to be done with it. And I pretty much stuck to that as an adult until I heard about this study and decided to sign up and see what happened. And for me, it wasn't so much that I was expecting a miracle or anything, as that I wanted to help the science. I think CRISPR is fascinating stuff. I think it has huge potential to help a lot of people, and I was really excited about being a part of that.
And I want to get into the study. Going back, you said something interesting there too. So you were 13, you said, when you were diagnosed. Can you talk about what that diagnosis was, just so everybody has a little bit more of an idea?
Of course. It was Leber's congenital amaurosis, which at the time was called something different. I don't remember. I would have to look at the paperwork,
okay.
which I haven't done in years. But it had a different name. At any rate, I think there was a lot of relief on my parents' part anyway, to finally have a diagnosis, but nobody could treat it. Nobody could do anything about it. As I said, I was fine because I had a good life. I was a happy kid. And so to me, it was kind of, I remember Dr. Panizzi in Oregon asking me when I was diagnosed, and I actually had to think about it because it didn't really have much of an impact on me personally.
Yeah, it didn't register because this is something that you were already, you were already living life. This is what you were used to. So exactly. I would imagine, so that diagnosis didn't really change anything for you.
No, not really.
And when you talk about your eyesight, I know this is probably a very difficult thing to describe, so forgive me and if this is a silly question, but can you describe what it was, at least before the procedure, like what you did see?
Um, yeah, that is a very difficult thing to do. I have a very narrow field of vision, which is typical, as I understand it, for people with Leber's. So I'm looking at the screen right now. I can see the screen. I can't see anything off to either side.
Gotcha.
So that can make things sort of challenging because if you're walking around, I've had an academic career, so spent a lot of time on university campuses. And if you're walking around, you need to be looking at the thing that you want to see, whether it's stairs or a door or whatever, because if I'm not, I will miss it completely. Um, in terms of what I can see within that field of vision, just not a lot of detail. Bigger objects were easier. So, I mentioned things like doorways. Those were easy because getting around a campus, doorways tend to have glass windows. Well, and even if they didn't, I could still see them, but they were big. Um, I could see steps up much more easily than I could see steps going down. So there were limitations like that. Um, I couldn't and can't really see much shape. So that's probably a defining characteristic, I would say.
That was an amazing job of describing that. Thank you very much. Yeah, just to give some context for everybody, and knowing that. And so, as you were saying before, this has been, something that you've had your whole life. You were living your life. How did you? And you weren't necessarily interested in going, further with changing anything. Got tired of all those tests that you were doing there when you were younger. So how did it turn about then you start participating in the study with OHSU?
Um, that is an interesting question, and I'm not sure that it's one I can answer.
Okay.
Truthfully, my whole family was absolutely shocked when I decided to do it. Um, I just, as I said, I think CRISPR is really interesting stuff and has a lot of potential to help a lot of people. And so I heard about the study on a story that was aired on National Public Radio. And, at first it was kind of playing in the background and I was doing my usual whatever. And then they started talking about Libras and I was like, oh, wait, that's me. So I thought about it for a while. I contacted the folks at OHSU, and I think a real impetus for me was the possibility that 5 or 10 years from now, some other little girl won't have to be dragged to a million different eye doctors and be miserable. She can go in and they can say, oh, you have Leber's and this is how we treat it. And so if anything, that's what I hope for as an outcome.
That's amazing. So, I mean, it really was going back to the science, studying that science,
very much so.
and then learning, helping to further that for the next, young person with Libras. Well, so you go into the study. What's that involve? And I don't know how much you could talk about or not, but what does it involve when you're the human study participant, for a CRISPR study?
I would say that participating in a clinical trial is not for the faint of heart. I wasn't really scared. I mean, I thought it through before I decided to do it. So by the time they were starting the prep for surgery and stuff like that, I was pretty comfortable with it. I had a brief moment of panic right before surgery when they told me they were going to intubate me. That kind of freaked me out a little bit. But obviously I recovered because here I am. It's a lot. It's a lot. I live in the Midwest, so it was a lot of travel to Portland. Travel, as we all know, airline travel isn't easy these days. My surgery was in 2022, so it was very, very post-COVID. I actually caught COVID after a visit to Oregon. There was a period of time when I was traveling initially like every 2 and every 4 weeks. So it was really a lot. And I won't say it was always easy, and I won't say there weren't times when I didn't want to, when I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But I feel like I have, and I'm glad that I did it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of travel to
Yeah.
do for that, and a lot of stress. And so you're going through this, you're going through the study. Tell me about when and how did you first start seeing results from this?
So let me first say that my understanding is that it varies with different participants. At least that is the impression I have from talking with Dr. Panizzi. However, for me, I think I started, the surgery was on April 13th, I think, and I started noticing them the following summer. So about 3 months. And prior to that, immediately actually after the surgery, I actually had some vision loss. And that was probably another little uh, nervous moment, I would say. They had prepared me for the fact that that could happen. So I was, it wasn't completely unexpected, but of course, when you experience something like that, you're thinking, oh, I hope this is temporary, because I've definitely gotten used to working with and using the site that I have. So, so there that lasted probably a couple weeks. And then after that, I would say that summer, I started just noticing things slowly, little things. I'd look at something and oh, huh, I never noticed that before. Or, oh, um, and it's I feel like it's been sort of steady progress ever since. And honestly, I'm not sure it's done yet. I don't know. I'm not saying it isn't or is. I'm just saying I feel like I still notice things.
And what was that feeling like when you started noticing something that you'd never really seen before?
Um, I mean, obviously it was wonderful because it meant that the treatment had, at least to some extent, been successful. So keep in mind, I never went into the study with an expectation that I was going to, leave the hospital and drive home. So even little things, I know you've read the notes, and things like finding my phone on the counter, seeing the lights on the coffee pot. That was kind of a fun one because the lights aren't that big. So that was sort of exciting. I mean, functionally, my life is pretty similar to what it was, although I'm more likely to look for things now than I was before the study. But I think the most exciting part was, sort of, yay, it worked. May not have been, it's not the be all end all cure at this point, but it's the first step, and that's great.
That's huge. Yeah, it's a first step. And I think, going back to that science side and the tech side, it shows that it works, at least to some extent. It's worked. I mean, that's
Yes,
that's a
and that was
really,
exactly what was exciting about it. I mean, yes, it's fun to see the lights on the coffee pot. Yes, it's fun to see the people moving on the TV screen and stuff like that. But the bigger, more important part was that it proved that the treatment had been successful.
and when I know you discussed it just a little bit, but I wanted to go back to that one more time. So when you think about the success of using this technology and gene editing, um, I guess let me rephrase that because goes into way into the science. I'll make it general. When you talk about the success of using this technology and what they were able to do at OHSU, does this give you hope for other people in the future who have gone through or had Libris and other conditions?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and that's got to be one of the most exciting things for it.
It
Anything else?
it really
Yeah, what do you think is the most important thing for people to know out there about this?
um I guess that depends on the person. It's really hard. If I had to pick a couple of things, sorry, I'm never good at picking one thing. I always
No,
pick
it's
more.
okay. I threw you a very
So,
general question there.
it depends on who the person is. The most important thing, I guess, is yes, it works and it is deserving of further study. And if I had to do it over again, I absolutely would. And I guess the other thing I would say is if there's anybody out there who has Libras, especially kids, because, you know, children's brains and eyes are so malleable. And I'm no scientist, but everything is still developing. And I think there's really a lot of potential in future studies certainly for kids and hopefully for adults as well.
Well, Donna, thank you very much, for being here with us, just to share this and talk about this. I'm really happy for the success, and that you're able to see more. And as you mentioned, notice those other things that you hadn't noticed before. Find the phone on there and find the coffee lights. But also, just going back to what you said, I think that's really one of those most important things, is just furthering that study, furthering this science, and helping out those other little kids out there, that little girl out there that might have Libris as well, and knowing that she may not have to be drugged to a million different doctors like you said you were. So, well, Donna, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your time being here with us.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
And for everybody watching, again, this is Fox 12 Now. Thank you for being a part of the show, and we do get to cover a lot here on this show. I believe we are going to be speaking to the doctor himself later on, so that's something to look forward to. But also, don't forget to download the Fox 12 Oregon app. You can watch all the different segments and different conversations that we get to have right there.